Right now, as you're watching this, your cortisol may already be rising for tonight, and you would have no idea until your eyes snap open at 2:43 a.m. and your heart feels slightly faster than it should. I didn't realize it either. I thought waking up in the middle of the night after 60 was just part of getting older. I blamed stress. I blamed drinking water too late. I blamed my mattress. But what I discovered shocked me because the real problem was happening silently inside my nervous system. After 60, cortisol does not simply respond to stress the way it used to. Its rhythm shifts. Multiple sleep studies have shown that older adults can experience nighttime cortisol elevations up to 300% higher than younger adults, even without emotional stress. That spike blocks melatonin, fragments deep sleep, and keeps the brain in a subtle alert state. You may fall asleep, but you never drop into the deep restorative stages that repair memory, muscles, and immune function. That was me. On paper, I was sleeping 6 hours. In reality, my deep sleep was collapsing. I felt slower, foggier, weaker. And researchers now know that chronically elevated nighttime cortisol accelerates inflammation, increases abdominal fat storage, and even speeds up cognitive decline. That's when I tested something simple. Just 1 tablespoon nightly of 5 specific compounds backed by research to blunt nighttime cortisol signaling and restore natural circadian balance. Not sedatives, not high-dose melatonin, not expensive pharmacy stacks. Within 10 days, something changed. I slept 8 hours straight. No 3 a.m. ceiling staring, no racing thoughts, no sudden alertness for no reason. What stunned me most was compound number 2. In a controlled sleep trial, it reduced nighttime cortisol by nearly 28% without morning grogginess. In this video, I'll rank the 5 compounds from least powerful to most transformative, explain how they work inside your body, and show you how to use them safely before bed. All research sources are listed in the description below if you want to examine the data yourself. Before we begin, I want to ask you something directly. How many times are you waking up each night right now? Tell me in the comments. Now, let's start with number 5, because this first compound looks almost too simple, yet it quietly lowers the stress hormone that may be stealing your sleep every single night. Number 5. Tart cherry concentrate. Most people think of tart cherry juice as something athletes drink for sore muscles, and while that is true, what is far more interesting is what it does to your cortisol and sleep architecture when you take it consistently before bed. Tart cherries, specifically the Montmorency variety, are one of the only natural food sources of melatonin, but that is only part of the story. A study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that participants who consumed tart cherry concentrate experienced a significant increase in both sleep time and sleep efficiency compared to a placebo group. The researchers discovered that tart cherry does not just provide a tiny dose of melatonin. It also contains powerful anthocyanins and proanthocyanidins, which are antioxidant compounds that inhibit an enzyme called indoleamine 23-dioxygenase. That enzyme normally degrades tryptophan, the amino acid your brain needs to produce serotonin, and then convert it into melatonin. So, by blocking that enzyme, tart cherry essentially protects your natural melatonin production pathway, which means your body makes more of its own melatonin rather than relying on an external dose. This is critical because exogenous melatonin supplements can actually disrupt your body's feedback loop over time, but tart cherry supports the system from within. On top of that, the anti-inflammatory effects of those anthocyanins directly reduce cortisol because inflammation and cortisol exist in a vicious feedback loop where one drives the other higher. When you lower inflammation, cortisol comes down naturally without forcing anything. The best way to use tart cherry for sleep is to get pure Montmorency tart cherry concentrate, not the sweetened juice cocktails you see in most grocery stores. You want the actual concentrated form that comes in a small bottle and looks almost like a thick syrup. Take 1 tablespoon mixed into a small glass of warm water about 30 to 45 minutes before bed. The warm water helps with absorption and also creates a calming ritual that signals to your brain that sleep is coming. Some people mix it with a little raw honey, which actually pairs well because honey provides a small glucose supply that prevents your liver from releasing stress hormones during the night when blood sugar dips. If you find the concentrate too tart on its own, you can stir it into a small cup of chamomile tea, which gives you an additional calming layer. Consistency is the key here because the melatonin protecting effects build over the first week and become more pronounced the longer you use it. Most of the clinical benefits in the studies showed up after about 7 days of nightly use, so give it at least that long before you judge the results. But tart cherry is just the opening act. The next compound works on a completely different system in your body. But before we continue, if you have been enjoying the video so far, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss more videos like this. Number 4. Raw cacao powder. Now, this one is going to sound counterintuitive because most people associate chocolate with energy and stimulation, but raw cacao powder, and I mean true raw cacao, not the processed cocoa you find in baking aisles, is one of the most magnesium-dense foods on the planet. And magnesium is arguably the single most important mineral for cortisol regulation and sleep. A study published in the Journal of Research in Medical Sciences found that magnesium supplementation significantly improved insomnia severity, sleep time, sleep efficiency, and early morning awakening in elderly subjects. But what makes cacao special compared to just popping a magnesium pill is that it delivers magnesium in a whole food matrix alongside other synergistic compounds that amplify the effect. Raw cacao contains theobromine, which, despite being a mild stimulant in large doses, actually has vasodilating properties at lower amounts, meaning it relaxes and widens your blood vessels, reducing blood pressure and creating a physical state of calm. It also contains anandamide, which is literally named after the Sanskrit word for bliss because it binds to the same receptors in your brain as cannabinoids, promoting a gentle feeling of relaxation and well-being without any psychoactive high. Then there is the phenylethylamine in cacao, which supports dopamine production in a way that helps stabilize mood and reduce the anxious rumination that keeps so many people staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning. The cortisol connection is direct. Researchers at Loma Linda University presented findings showing that consuming cacao with high flavonoid concentrations of 70% or higher significantly reduced cortisol levels in participants while also improving markers of immune function and reducing inflammatory cytokines. The flavonoids in cacao activate specific stress response pathways in a beneficial way, essentially training your cells to become more resilient to stress through a process called hormesis, where a small challenge makes the system stronger. To use raw cacao for sleep, take 1 level tablespoon of organic raw cacao powder and stir it into warm milk or a warm plant-based milk alternative about an hour before bed. The reason you want to use it earlier than some of the other compounds is that the theobromine does have a mild stimulant effect that needs time to metabolize, and by the time you actually lie down, what remains is the deep magnesium relaxation and the cortisol-lowering effect of the flavonoids. Do not use Dutch processed cocoa because the alkalizing process destroys most of the flavonoids that provide the benefits. Look for labels that say raw, unprocessed, or ceremonial grade. Adding a pinch of cinnamon and a small drizzle of honey turns this into something that feels like a luxurious evening treat rather than a health chore. And that matters because you will actually stick with it when it tastes good. Now, if cacao calms the body, what comes next at number 3 directly calms the brain itself. Number 3. Golden milk turmeric paste. Turmeric has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years as a sleep aid and stress reliever, but Western science spent decades dismissing it until the clinical data became impossible to ignore. The active compound in turmeric is curcumin, and a randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Affective Disorders found that curcumin supplementation was as effective as a commonly prescribed pharmaceutical in reducing symptoms of major depressive disorder, which shares many of the same neurochemical pathways as chronic stress and insomnia. What makes curcumin so relevant to cortisol and sleep is that it operates on multiple mechanisms simultaneously. First, curcumin is one of the most potent natural inhibitors of nuclear factor kappa B, which is a protein complex that acts as a master switch for inflammation throughout your entire body. When NF-kappa B is overactive, which it almost always is in people with chronic stress, it drives inflammatory cytokine production, which directly signals your adrenal glands to keep pumping out cortisol even when there is no real threat. By dialing down NF-kappa B, curcumin essentially removes one of the loudest alarm signals telling your body to stay in stress mode. Second, curcumin increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, often called BDNF, which is a protein that supports the growth and survival of neurons in the hippocampus, the brain region most damaged by chronic cortisol exposure. People with chronically elevated cortisol literally experience hippocampal shrinkage, which impairs memory and emotional regulation, and curcumin helps reverse that process. Third, curcumin modulates the enzyme monoamine oxidase, which breaks down serotonin and dopamine. So by gently inhibiting that enzyme, curcumin helps maintain higher levels of the neurotransmitters your brain needs to feel calm and transition smoothly into sleep. The catch with curcumin has always been bioavailability because on its own your body absorbs almost none of it. This is where the golden milk preparation method becomes essential. Take 1 tablespoon of high-quality turmeric powder and cook it on low heat with a small amount of coconut oil or ghee and a generous pinch of black pepper for about 7 to 10 minutes, stirring constantly until it forms a thick paste. The heat activates certain compounds, the fat makes curcumin soluble so your body can absorb it, and the piperine in black pepper increases curcumin bioavailability by up to 2,000% according to research published in Planta Medica. Once you have your paste, stir 1 tablespoon of it into a cup of warm milk or warm oat milk. Add a touch of honey if you like, and drink it about 45 minutes before bed. This golden milk recipe is not just a trendy wellness drink. It is a bioavailability optimized delivery system that ensures the curcumin actually reaches your bloodstream and crosses the blood-brain barrier where it can do the most good. Many people report feeling a noticeable wave of calm within the first 3 nights of consistent use, and the anti-inflammatory effects compound beautifully over weeks. That is powerful. But number 2 targets something even deeper, the very neurotransmitter that tells your brain to stop being alert. Number 2, glycine-rich bone broth. Bone broth has had a massive resurgence in the health world over the last several years, but most of the conversation focuses on gut health and joint support. What almost nobody talks about is the extraordinary effect that bone broth has on cortisol and sleep, and it all comes down to one amino acid that bone broth delivers in massive quantities: glycine. A landmark study published in the journal Sleep and Biological Rhythms by researchers at the Ajinomoto Group in Japan found that subjects who consumed 3 grams of glycine before bedtime fell asleep significantly faster, experienced deeper slow-wave sleep, reported feeling less fatigued the next day, and showed improved cognitive performance on memory tests the following morning. 3 grams is the amount naturally present in roughly 1 cup of properly made bone broth, which is why this works so perfectly as a 1 tablespoon concentrated approach or a small warm cup in the evening. The mechanism behind glycine's sleep effect is fascinating because it does not work like a sedative at all. Instead, glycine acts on NMDA receptors in a specific area of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your master biological clock. By activating these receptors, glycine triggers a drop in core body temperature, and this temperature drop is one of the most critical signals your body uses to initiate sleep. You know that feeling when you are lying in a cool room under warm blankets and you feel that wave of drowsiness wash over you? That is your core temperature dropping, and glycine accelerates that process from the inside. But the cortisol connection goes even deeper. A separate study published in Frontiers in Neuroscience found that glycine acts as an inhibitory neurotransmitter in the central nervous system, calming neuronal activity in a way that directly opposes the excitatory, anxiety-promoting effects of elevated cortisol. It also supports the production of glutathione, your body's master antioxidant, which helps clear the oxidative damage that accumulates during periods of high stress and poor sleep. To get the maximum benefit, you want to make or source a high-quality bone broth that has been simmered for at least 12 to 24 hours, because that extended cooking time is what draws the glycine, proline, and other amino acids out of the bones and connective tissue. The best bones to use are knuckle bones, joint bones, and feet because they contain the highest concentration of collagen, which breaks down into glycine-rich gelatin. You will know your broth is good quality if it turns into a thick jelly when refrigerated, because that gelatin content directly correlates with glycine concentration. Take 1 tablespoon of this concentrated gelatinous broth and dissolve it in a small cup of hot water, add a pinch of sea salt, and sip it about 30 minutes before bed. The warm liquid, the amino acids, and the gentle saltiness create a combination that your nervous system interprets as deeply nourishing and safe, which is the exact opposite of the fight or flight state that cortisol creates. If making your own broth feels like too much work, look for brands that sell concentrated bone broth paste or powder that gels when cooled, as that gelatin content is your quality indicator. And now, the compound I have been building toward, the one that the research says outperforms them all. Number 1. Ashwagandha root infusion. If there is one compound on this entire list that could transform your sleep and your stress levels on its own, it is ashwagandha. And the clinical evidence behind it is not just promising, it is overwhelming. Ashwagandha, known scientifically as Withania somnifera, where somnifera literally translates to sleep-inducing, has been the subject of more than a dozen randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials in just the last 10 years, and the results are remarkably consistent. The most cited study, published in the Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine, found that subjects who took a standardized ashwagandha root extract experienced a reduction in serum cortisol levels of up to 27.9% over 60 days compared to the placebo group. But here is what makes that finding truly extraordinary. The participants were not doing anything else differently. They did not change their diets, their exercise habits, or their sleep routines. The ashwagandha alone was responsible for that dramatic cortisol reduction. A separate study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine went further and found that ashwagandha significantly improved sleep quality as measured by both actigraphy, which tracks actual movement during sleep, and by validated sleep questionnaire scores, with participants reporting that they fell asleep faster, stayed asleep longer, and felt more rested upon waking. The way ashwagandha works is through a class of compounds called withanolides, and the most potent of these is withafferin A. These withanolides modulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the entire hormonal cascade that controls your stress response from the brain all the way down to the adrenal glands. Instead of just masking symptoms like many sleep aids do, ashwagandha actually recalibrates the system so that your body produces less cortisol in response to the same stressors. Think of it like adjusting the sensitivity on a smoke alarm that has been going off every time you make toast. The alarm still works when there is a real fire, but it stops screaming at every minor trigger. Ashwagandha also enhances GABAergic activity in the brain, meaning it supports the neurotransmitter GABA, which is the primary chemical responsible for calming neural activity and promoting relaxation. This is the same neurotransmitter targeted by prescription anti-anxiety medications, but ashwagandha supports it naturally without the dependency risks or cognitive side effects. Additionally, recent research published in the journal Curis found that ashwagandha improved both sleep onset latency and sleep quality through modulation of triethylene glycol, a naturally occurring compound in the plant's leaves that has direct sleep-inducing properties. The best way to use ashwagandha is not through capsules or pills, though those can work, but through a traditional root infusion that maximizes the extraction of withanolides and makes them highly bioavailable. Take 1 tablespoon of organic ashwagandha root powder, preferably from a KSM 66 or sensoril standardized extract, and simmer it gently in 1 cup of warm whole milk or coconut milk on low heat for about 5 minutes. The fat in the milk is essential because withanolides are fat-soluble, and without that lipid carrier, a significant portion passes through your system without being absorbed. Add a small pinch of black pepper to further enhance absorption, a half teaspoon of cinnamon for blood sugar regulation during the night, and a touch of raw honey once it has cooled slightly. Drink this about 30 to 45 minutes before bed, and here is the important part. Commit to at least 6 weeks of nightly use because while some people notice effects within the first week, the full cortisol recalibration and HPA axis rebalancing documented in the clinical trials occurred over a period of 8 to 12 weeks. The effects are cumulative, meaning each week builds on the last, and many people report that somewhere around week 3 to 4, they experience a noticeable shift where they start waking up feeling genuinely refreshed in a way they had forgotten was possible. Ashwagandha also has the unique benefit of being an adaptogen, which means it does not just lower cortisol across the board. It helps normalize cortisol to appropriate levels depending on the time of day. So while it brings nighttime cortisol down so you can sleep, it actually supports healthy morning cortisol peaks so you wake up with natural energy rather than that groggy, drugged feeling that many sleep aids cause. So there you have it, 5 simple compounds, 1 tablespoon each evening, working through completely different biological pathways to bring your cortisol back under control and restore the deep, restorative sleep your body has been desperate for. Tart cherry protects your natural melatonin production. Raw cacao floods your system with magnesium and calming flavonoids. Golden milk turmeric paste shuts down the inflammatory signals that keep cortisol elevated. Glycine-rich bone broth drops your core temperature and calms your nervous system at the deepest level. And ashwagandha recalibrates your entire stress response system from the top down. You do not have to start with all 5 tonight. Pick the one that resonated most with you. Try it consistently for 1 week, and pay attention to how you feel when you wake up. Then layer in another one, and then another. The compounding effect when you combine multiple cortisol-lowering pathways is where the real transformation happens, and your body will thank you for every single night of deep sleep you give it back. If this information was helpful, and you want more science-backed strategies for sleeping better, feeling calmer, and aging stronger, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you do not miss what is coming next. Thank you so much for watching.